All right, welcome everyone to day, what is it, 4 of Lead Generation World London. We've had a great week so far with some really wonderful sessions. And just a reminder on that note, all the sessions are recorded and uploaded into the app. So you can go back if you missed some of those sessions, you can go back, click on it, and it's right there for you to watch again, and feel free to reach out to the speakers with any follow-up questions. They'll get your messages as well. But those videos are there for you. But today we've got one session, and then we've got our networking event in an hour that I encourage you to take part in as well. It's going to be a lot of fun, and you get to meet some people and other attendees. So anyway, let's get started with today's session. But before we do, I do want to remind you that to ask questions and to participate. We get a lot out of these sessions when you ask questions. So please do. You can do it one of two ways. You can do it within the app if you're watching it there. There's a Q&A function to the right of the page where you can put in your questions. I will see them and then ask our presenter them after his session. Or you can, if you're watching it via Zoom, you can put it in there as well, and we'll see them as well. I'll do the same. So at either way, ask questions. We love to see them come across, and the participation is key to everybody getting the most out of the session. So all right, well, without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and introduce Joe Yua-Scholfield of MVF Global. He's the Managing Director of Growth there. And we've got a really great session on how to effectively identify, test, and scale new verticals. So, Joe, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you and let you take it from here.
Oh, thanks, Michael. So I'll just share my screen. And open that up, and hopefully everyone can see that.
Yep, perfect.
Okay. Great. So yeah, I'm going to talk to you today about how to launch and scale the next £1 million or $1 million vertical. So a little bit about me. I'm Joe Schofield. I've been working in lead generation for the last 10 years. We've driven, hundreds of millions of pounds of revenue from new verticals, launched lots of new marketing channels, and very importantly, I'm an Arsenal fan. A quick note, I am in the UK, but I'm not in a pub. Don't be confused by the wooden panelling. I am at home. This is just my kind of little work from home workspace. So unfortunately, I'm not at the pub just yet. So MVF, a little bit about us. We generate over 4 million leads per year. All of our marketing is conducted in-house, so end-to-end. We have kind of 200 marketers working on pretty much every digital channel that you could think of. So 40 plus marketing channels. We generate leads and mostly work on a pay per lead model, sending those leads directly into our clients' CRMs. We have a very strong relationships with our clients, and it's very much kind of symbiotic and two-way relationships. And we're kind of sector agnostic, so we work in pretty much every sector out there. So yeah, just to recap. We're in over 45 markets, 40 channels, targeting kind of millions of keywords, thousands and thousands of creatives, and a bunch of languages. So really, if I was thinking about a company in this space that does international in kind of a big way across a bunch of sectors, then I think that's where MVF really sits in the industry. So we're going to talk about how to launch and scale the next £1 million vertical. And this session is going to be quite, I'm hoping, informative, give a little bit of secret sauce. It's not going to be kind of very up top level thinking. It's quite, how you can take some of this and implement it, and it should be, I'm hoping, actionable. So I'll go through it. Hopefully it makes sense and it lands and resonates with you. And then maybe at the end there'll be questions, and I'm happy to answer those where possible. So firstly, I wanted to kind of start as, what do we mean by a $1 million vertical? Well, I think you kind of have to break that down. So if you want to make £1 million, that's a kind of a run rate of 83K a month. And then in kind of a working days, you're looking at 3,700 So we're going to try and figure out how we generate £3,500 of revenue per working day. If we can run at weekends, great. That's really good. But for us, it's like Monday to Friday, what can we do to generate £3,500? So this seems like a really simple process, but it kind of just gets you thinking in the right way of, you need to be doing this consistently. Like every day you need to be able to generate £3,500 of revenue, and you need a product which you can market that's going to allow you to do that. So on the left, you see some examples of, the type of leads that you're going to need to sell and the price you're going to need to sell them for to achieve that revenue. So what I've done is selected, some numbers that I think kind of make sense. So 50 leads at £70, that feels like a kind of volume that might be sensible. After 250 leads at £14, where you're going to be able to potentially make the margin that you'll need for that vertical. So we want to be able to generate that volume of leads per day. And really, if we're working on a CPL, we're going to be generating conversions. So we're not going to sell every conversion because there's going to be duplications, or there's going to be things that we're going to screw up. So we're going to generate 70 to 350 conversions per day. We need to be able to generate leads which work for our clients. So we want to be able to generate those on multiple channels. So we've got different levers to pull in order to improve quality. And then so our CPA target needs to be somewhere between 50 and £10 if we're going to break even, or at some point hopefully make money. On that note, making profit isn't the key concern for us when we're launching a new vertical that we're expecting, or we're hoping is going to drive £1 million of revenue. What we want is scale, and that there's quality for the client. Because if we don't have scale, we're never going to get to that number. And if we don't have the quality, then we're not going to keep clients long enough to make a consistent amount of revenue. So we need scale and quality as our kind of key things that we're working towards. So I'll take a break there and think, MVF has been around for 10 years. How many unique subcategories do you think MVF has launched in 10 years? The answer is over 1,700. So 1,753 different verticals MVF has launched in the last 10 years. And I can tell you that 1,753 verticals are not live today. And we've launched some weird ones. I've been around for launching all of these. Not going to say they all worked and turned into £1 million verticals, but it shows the type of different thinking that you might be required in order to make it work. So after that, what are we looking at here? We're basically talking about product, sales, and marketing. So the product, it needs to be ideally available global. It needs to have a certain ticket price, in which case the CPL model is going to work for it. We're looking for clients who generally have call centers or sales operations operating nationwide. And we want to be able to hopefully have a variety of big clients. And we want to be able to do this on different marketing channels. So it needs to be able to work on a variety. So that's kind of our overall thesis for what we're looking for. So once you kind of understand that, you think, right, how am I going to research this? Of all the things I could be marketing, you think, right, I could go and create the perfect research process, or you could kind of just see what's working for other people. And really, this isn't cheating, and it should be your point of first examination. But how to do it at scale? How do you kind of see what's working out there at scale? And we're not talking about, hacking the system or writing some crazy code, scraping lots of websites. They're the right tools. And there's lots of these tools out there. And in fact, some of the marketing platforms have made it more and more easy for marketers to understand what different people are doing. So there's page transparency on Facebook. There's tools like SEMrush or AdBeat, and these will help you to understand what's working. Taking these tools and making them part of your workflow is the next major step. So not just doing this ad hoc, but being a repeated process that you do or your teams do to understand what different verticals and niches are kind of working well. And as well as this, speak to your account managers. They're there to help you to spend more money on their platforms, help them do their job better. Ask them what's working well, what are you seeing growing in different geos, or try and use and leverage their experience. So this is the Do Lead kind of lead generation landscape. I think this is an amazing document, but what it shows is know what your competition is doing, know who your competition are, and then understand what they're doing, and keep an eye on this, because you might have those in a specific product or a specific region, but you need to be aware of the different changes that they're making, what's working for them. And then think about what makes the perfect client, what's going to make that match for you and your company. So when I think about what makes a perfect match for a client that's going to help me scale a $1 million subcategory, they need to be able to buy 50 to 250 leads per day. So they need a sales team. So do they have a sales team, and how big is their sales team? They need to understand their ROI target. So what is their North Star KPI, and how do they measure this? Some companies will be scaling up, and they'll be looking to acquire users or grow revenue. Others will be looking at things like cost of sale, and understanding that and how strong they're able to measure that is really important. They need to be able to scale. So you need to be asking them, if our leads close, how many of these could you buy a month, to get an understanding of, as a client, are you going to grow with me? They need a strong sales approach. So are they auto dialing the lead, or do they have speed to lead KPIs? How quickly are they speaking to the traffic that they're already generating? What other traffic are they generating? Is their product the right fit? At 14 to 70 pounds per lead, you need to kind of walk through each of these metrics and be sure that it's not going to fall down at some point, because you're going to put a lot of time and attention into these clients, and you don't want to mislead them or take them down a route that's ultimately not going to work for either of you. And does their product have broad appeal? We're talking about marketing this on various channels and driving consistently high volumes of traffic. That needs to have a pretty mass appeal in order to work. So we then get this kind of, what's working for the client, what's in this case working for MBF, and this kind of sweet spot in the middle is what you're looking for, and that's going to help you identify, are they the right client that's going to be able to work with me and grow with me? So you're left with a big decision. We know what's working on the different platforms. We kind of know what's working for our competition. We know what our ideal client looks like. So what do we launch? What does that, how does that really help us with anything? It's basically time now that you get specific. You kind of have to start asking yourself some questions about the vertical itself. Is it always on? We need products which, are going to be able to drive traffic, 5 days a week, every day. So there are some verticals which have kind of seasonality and peaks and troughs in demand. And whilst they can have really big windows in which we can generate a lot of volume, I would say that these verticals are probably more challenging to work with. So you want it to be an always on product. Is there a heavy compliance burden? This is a difficult and challenging topic to navigate, but you are going to want to think about, if I'm scaling this into lots of different countries and on lots of different marketing platforms, what are the compliance challenges that I'm going to face in each country or on each platform? And how is that going to affect the speed of which I'm going to be able to roll this out, the confidence with which I'm going to be able to speak to clients, and how willing are you to get involved in that? Is the primary data point for clients a phone number? So what we're looking to do with CPL leads is take these and put them into a sales team, and the primary method of communication needs to be a phone number. And so if they're looking to do things online, generally this may not be the right type of product. Can I run this product in multiple territories? If we're going to scale this to the kind of the ultimate ambition of being $1 million category, then we're going to want to be able to do that ideally in lots of different countries. So does the product work into a number of different countries? So an example of what this wouldn't be is, very specifically PPI or Yua-Scholfield. These are two big lead generation verticals that have been around for the last 10 years, but they're very specific to single geos. That can be great, and you can really focus down on that, but probably there's a finite value and scale to each of those types of categories. So we want things that we can run globally? Is the landscape for potential clients deep and significant? If there's only 2 major players in this vertical and you don't close them and you're not able to win that business, that means that vertical's not going to work. You want big, deep supplier landscapes. Is there a clear value proposition and need for the product for the user? Why do they need that, and what's the value for them as a user for finding this product? Without that, you're going to struggle to continuously come up with new and winning advertising creatives, winning landing pages, and it's going to be really hard to market. Ultimately, we need to be marketing products which users want or have a need for. And is the sales cycle short enough? There are products which have long tender cycles and sales cycles of 6, 9, 12 months. We need a much shorter window than that so that we're able to successfully optimize our campaigns to our client success metrics. So we need to be thinking about how long that is. Ideally, I would say a kind of 30 to 60 day window is what you're looking at there, to at least have got to at least have achieved the main KPI from your client. So after this, it's kind of back to the drawing board. So who are your clients? You need to say, right, we've identified a variety of potential clients, then build an addressable universe, so understand who all these clients are, and score them based on specific criteria which you think you need to be successful. Pursue these prospects relentlessly. Winning the right clients is half the battle. So understand who your potential clients are, score them, rank them, and focus on that relentlessly. Understanding the product. You need to be able to understand what you're marketing, and you need to speak as an expert. So when you're creating marketing copy or angles for your users, you need to come across as a domain expert. Similarly, when you're speaking to clients, you need to give them the confidence that you know what you're talking about. The only way you can do this is really deeply understanding the product that you're marketing. Nail the funnel. So you need to understand what is the funnel that we're going to have, right from the creative to the point at which someone has submitted their details. Are you going to have an advertorial, or are you running straight to form? What are the different questions that you're going to be running? What's the value proposition that you're leading with on your creatives? What are your different creatives? And that kind of leads me to my next point, which is search and destroy. Search traffic has the highest intent. So if you already have organic traffic for specific verticals, that's great. But in general, when we're launching new verticals, we're going to lead with paid search. It's going to give us the richest insights into what people are looking for and why. And it's the vertical that's going to drive in general the highest quality for our clients. And then we move to push channels, and there we're kind of thinking about creative is king. So creative testing is going to be the thing that means that campaign works. You can have great targeting, you can have a great CTA, your bid strategy can be just right, but on push channels, it's all about that creative. And so really understanding, and this is where it kind of feeds into that understanding the product, because you're going to want to know what the pain points are for your users so you can get the best creatives possible. So now we're coming to nail the launch. So this is where new verticals will fall down in the first days and weeks. So the initial period is really critical, and you need to be really mindful of this when launching new verticals. Did you set the right expectations with the clients? So this is, I think, often where things can fall down, where you've sold something and what the client is expecting doesn't quite match up. So that could be that you're generating really high lead volumes from day one, and the client hasn't put the right salespeople to be able to speak to the potential leads. So your lead flow, your cadence is all wrong and not what they're expecting. Have you kind of set the expectation about what questions you're going to be asking and any filters based off the back of that? And really, this is a brand new client. They don't know you. And if you set off on the wrong foot, that can have, that can push you back weeks and kind of kill the relationship right from the start. So this is a really vital part of nailing the launch. The next thing I'd say is start with one channel, and that channel is always going to be search. It can be tempting to think, got all these channels out here that I could run, but the fundamentals of successfully launching a new vertical is to understand as much about that vertical from a user side and a client side as quickly as possible. And search is going to help you do that. So your second channel, once you've launched your first, your second channel should always be Facebook. I think it can be tempting again to think about, more niche or specific channels, but Facebook has huge scale. It has an incredible kind of targeting capability. And ultimately, when you think you've run out of scale on Facebook, you probably haven't, and you can probably spend more and focus more on Facebook and keep doing that. There's very few channels that have the scale and capability of Facebook. And I often think that people get tempted to run new channels before they fully utilize the total extent of Facebook as a channel. So search and Facebook are going to be your key drivers for making any new vertical work, and focus relentlessly on that. The final point here is going through the entire funnel, and do this incredibly diligently. Okay, so what we're looking for here is any kind of mistake which could cost you at this early point, and get this done by everyone. Don't just do this yourself. Create a process whereby you sit down and you go through every touch point along the funnel to understand, is there anything here which doesn't feel right, where we're not setting the right expectation and it's just misaligned? And this is a critical detail that should become part of your process for launching any new vertical. It's a kind of checks and balances process, which is, I think, incredibly important, but one that's easy to be overlooked and missed. So Dispo. Dispo is disposition data. It's kind of client feedback. And it was an excuse for me to get a GIF into my presentation. And I kind of wanted to walk through a scenario which I'm sure lots of us have experienced. So you launch a new campaign, you're like crushing CTR or whatever your metrics are, and you're driving tons of conversions. The client's like, it's all good, getting loads of conversions. Yep, sure, they're great. End of the month comes and the client pauses and they kind of say, the leads are no good. Kind of, we're not closing them or whatever, they're not good. And at this point, you're kind of sat there tearing your hair out, and you're thinking, why didn't, what was missing here? Why didn't we get that feedback? And the reason why we don't get feedback, I think, is feedback is easy to not give. As a colleague, you often get asked for feedback, or as a friend or a husband, you might be asked for feedback, and it's just one of those things that slips to the bottom of the pile. And so everyone deprioritizes feedback. And what we need to do is make it really hard really hard to avoid and really easy for them to do. So we're not looking for the most in-depth data. We are essentially saying, day one, we've sent you these leads. How have they performed? Which ones have been good? Which ones have been bad? Working with the client to make it as easy as possible for them to do, but really hard for them to avoid, because you're speaking with them every day. And you're building that cadence of getting that kind of day on day feedback. And that's going to be like incredibly important to start building this relationship where you're driving leads into your clients, and your clients are feeding back how those leads are performing. And this is the kind of the flywheel of success. You take the data that your client gives you about the lead outcomes, you upload it into your marketing platforms, or you think about which creators have driven the successful leads, what questions the leads which have closed your clients have answered versus which questions they've answered that haven't closed. Find out everything you can about the leads that are working for your clients and also the ones which aren't. Ooh. So this then becomes the process where you're taking that information and you're putting it into everything that you do. You then need to create tests to find more of these and build a kind of a center of excellence around this process. So you're building campaigns, they're generating leads for your clients. Your clients are telling you how these leads are performing. You are then optimizing based on those outcomes. This is a virtuous circle of over and over again, over time, you'll be generating better and better traffic for your clients. What happens is your clients then increase the amount of traffic that they're buying. And this is the virtuous circle of how we get to kind of £1 million verticals. So always be researching and ideally getting better whilst you're at it. So to launch a big vertical once is great. Doing it over and over again is where the magic happens. I've launched lots of verticals since I've been at MVF. Lots of them have failed, as I alluded to at the start. Way more have failed than have been successful. But I know a lot about it's in my head, and one of the things that we've had to do in order to scale verticals at scale is codify the process so that everyone in the company understands what makes a good vertical and what makes a good client, and that's the kind of the lifeblood of what is work of your business. Making sure people understand these two really important things, and not just keeping it in people's heads, and making it really easy to understand why that's a good vertical and why that's a good client and how you've achieved those things. What's the story behind that? And having this at the kind of the center of what you're doing is super important. If you're going to grow your business, you need to understand what a good vertical looks like, and you need everyone in your company, from your finance team to your HR team to your marketing teams, to care deeply about knowing what makes a good vertical. Then you need to think about what's holding up each stage of the process for launching and scaling new verticals. So if you're not getting enough new ideas, then how do you increase the cadence of research? Do you work with freelance researchers, or do you need to increase the amount of tools that you're using? But that's something that you need to identify. If it's that you can't build enough creatives to launch enough new verticals, then can you work with freelance creative builders? And whatever you can do to break down the barriers at each of these stages and increase the cadence with which you can launch more, that's going to be critical to scaling more verticals. So finally, I would say that failure is an option. MVF has launched 1,750 verticals. Most of these have failed. We're not live with most of these, but we've kind of taken lots of bets and improved and increased our hit rate as we've gone. And that's kind of our ethos for launching new verticals. But we still fail like all the time. And as an individual, I still get it wrong a lot. But that doesn't put me off doing it again, because I understand that the opportunity and the upside is worth it. But don't take my word for it. This guy down here, Jeff Bezos, says that if the size of your failures isn't growing, you're not going to be inventing at a size that can actually move the needle. So as you're growing, you want to be taking bigger bets, and if you're not, that's a kind of stasis that I would say is dangerous. So from one business grade to another, I would say that the idea is not to be perfect, but to be getting bigger and better each time, and learning from your mistakes and taking those learnings and improving it, so that the next time you can do it bigger and better and grow and grow and grow. So that's it from me today.
Excellent. Based on that picture, Joe, it looks like you got the COVID haircut still.
Yeah, I've grown it out.
That was really, really excellent. We definitely have some questions, and I want to give some time for for those that are listening in to type in some questions too. And just a reminder, you can type those questions into the Zoom Q&A function or the Whova app function, and I'll see them. So first question I have for you, let's see here, is around pricing. You mentioned that obviously you're not in it to necessarily with an expectation to make money right out the gate, but pricing out your leads effectively to a client that may or may not be already buying leads, and that also you're not entirely sure what the marketing conversion is going to come out to. So it could be tricky. How do you go about that, and how do you potentially set an expectation for clients that, hey, this is the price today, but it may change?
Yeah, I think like pricing is is tricky. Obviously, you can forecast what you think. With relative accuracy, you can forecast what you think those leads are going to cost. But I would say that really, you understand your clients' metrics, and they will tell you, what are their close rates, what does their cost of sale need to be, and then you kind of work that back, and you say, right, is my lead price going to make sense for you? Yes or no? Is it ever going to make sense for you? If you think that there's a chance that it could get there with kind of that relationship of optimization, then maybe you go in at a lower price that's going to work for them on day one, and then kind of build that relationship, and you might absorb some of that cost, and that's just going to be a requirement. But over time, they'll say, yeah, these leads are working for us, and we can kind of increase our price. And it's that relationship. It needs to be two-way. You can't be dictating the price and pushing it, and similarly, they just can't not be giving you the information that you need to make things better on your end. So I think it's all down to that, really. Yeah,
and I think that it's such an important part is finding that right client, and I think that kind of goes into this next question too. Is you also mentioned part of the formula is finding some whales, right? Some big clients that can take volume and continue to scale with you. But this question here is, do you want what is truly the right sort of client to start out with? Is it a whale, or is it somewhere smaller or medium? Do you want to burn that bridge with the whale if something were to go wrong initially? That's sort of the question.
Yeah, I think like it's a really good question. I wouldn't say there's a perfect answer. Yeah. Building a relationship with someone who is willing to have an open dialogue and feedback to you is going to be really, really important. And your kind of lead client, that's what it's about, right? They need to have a good sales process, but be willing to work with you and understand that in order for the vertical to go from brand new to scaling, mm-hmm. that's a two-way street. And maybe that's a smaller client where you can build that relationship, and depending on the kind of the total size of clients that are out there, you may be more willing to start with one of those big clients, because there may be 5, 10, 20 other opportunities, as well as how mature is the lead buying and demand gen industry in that space, right? If they've already got 10 lead sources and you're just another, then probably they get what it is. If it's pretty new for lead generation and demand acquisition and demand gen, then maybe you need to be thinking about treating it with a bit more kid gloves. So I think there's a few things to be thinking about.
Yeah. Two more questions. One is, how many verticals is MVF active in today? Any idea what that number is?
It's somewhere between 1,750 and it's probably
and one
around 400 verticals probably is what we're currently allowed in at this point.
You said 400 or so?
Yeah, 400 or so.
Wow. Okay, last question. I think another really good question is when do you sort of decide to pull the cord? When is it not working financially or quality wise? How far out do you go with that experiment per se?
Yeah, I think this is really a really interesting question for new verticals, but in general, I think can be a very interesting topic. You know, when do you give up on something? When do you call it a day? And I think one of the things that we've built at MBF is a process where it's, you know, you might have a lead and a team that's leading on launching a new vertical, and they're coming up with the hypothesis, they're working on the creative, you know, they're leading the charge for it, but that there's governance around that, and teams of people who are asking questions and either playing devil's advocate or asking things which they feel may not have been answered already. And it's, I think in general, it's, if you have like an emotional investment into something, it can be really hard to say, yeah, actually now is time to give up. You can always be tempted to do one more test or bring on one more client or change the landing page just that little bit more, and maybe that will have the big thing that changes it. And so I would say create a body or a framework for which you're able to interrogate that decision making, and not just go blindly on testing and testing until you spend, you know, hundreds of thousands of pounds, and that way you should lead to better decision making.
Yeah. Along with that, is there a hypothetical, or is there a sort of a number that you guys go, okay, if we get to, you know, if we lose to this, you know, if we go in the red by 20,000 pounds, then that's it. And then, and obviously, you know, you're asking all those questions as you lead into that, but is there sort of a number that you, and I'm not asking what that number is, but is there sort of a financial number that you guys sort of go, okay, this is where we start asking more and more questions, or not?
I think it's less to do with how much you're maybe losing. It's the stuff that's surrounding that. You know, if you're generating a couple of conversions a day and you're spending £2,000 to achieve that, then you have to think the delta between where I am today and where I need to get to is massive. Am I going to have a big win on a channel, on a landing page? You know, is that likely? If you're generating loads of conversions and maybe they're a little bit too expensive, or you haven't got the supplier depth that you might need, then that question is easier to answer. But I think that's kind of it. It can't just be about how much it's costing you. It's the factors that are kind of surrounding that, and how realistic it is that you're going to get enough wins or incremental improvements throughout the funnel that this vertical is ever going to make success. And understanding what success is. You know, is it revenue? Is it profit? Is it scale? You know, what are you looking to achieve? And that will kind of inform your investment thesis.
Yeah, no, that's great. It just reminds me of frankly, how difficult it can be to start a new vertical that you don't know a whole lot about. I mean, having all the factors that you mentioned, and you really did a great job laying this all out, but putting it in place and putting it in action is difficult. Finding the right client, you know, finding, you know, the right price, getting the right market, you know, all those sorts of things are all these different levers that kind of go backwards and forwards, and getting them all in tune is definitely a skill that if you can find, is guaranteeing you for success. So I appreciate you sharing this information with us. I think people really enjoyed it, and will enjoy the recording as well if you're watching it not live. If anybody has any questions or wants to reach out to you, they could probably go to Joe Yua-Scholfield on LinkedIn and reach out to you there, or reach out to you any other way that you recommend, or is that the best way?
Yeah, LinkedIn. Yeah, shoot me a message. That is probably the easiest way.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Joe. I appreciate it, and thank everyone for attending, and we'll see you on the next one.